The night in the Mongolian high desert was the deepest kind of dark, a black so complete it felt solid. Jae Kim sat on the worn steps of his trailer, a small cup of cold coffee in his hand. Around him, for kilometers in every direction, lay the bones of the modern world. Stacks of crushed cars, piles of rusted machinery, and mountains of industrial scrap. This junkyard was his kingdom, a place he had come to after Seoul had taken everything else from him. The silence was his companion, and the vast, star-filled sky his only ceiling. He was about to go inside when a new star appeared. It was green and bright and moving too fast. It grew larger, silent, and then it was not a star at all. A sharp, tearing sound split the air, a shriek of metal meeting earth at impossible speed. The ground jumped under his feet, and a low boom rolled across the empty land. A pillar of dust, pale in the moonlight, rose from the center of his yard. Jae stood frozen. His first thought was not of aliens or miracles, but of more work. A crashed satellite, maybe, another piece of sky trash for him to clean up. He grabbed his heavy flashlight and a wrench, his boots crunching on the gravel as he walked towards the dust cloud. What he found in the shallow crater was not from any nation on Earth. It was a ship, but like no ship he had ever seen. It looked like a piece of obsidian glass that had been grown, not built, shaped into a sleek predatory form. It was about the size of a large bus. A deep crack ran down its side, pulsing with a sick violet light that made his teeth ache. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet, like rotting fruit, that he approached slowly, his light playing over the impossible angles. Then he heard a new sound, a low hum. From above, 3 smaller shapes descended. They were discs, smooth and silent, landing in a perfect triangle around the wreck. Jae stumbled back into the shadow of a bulldozer, his heart hammering against his ribs. Figures emerged. They were tall, slightly built, with gray skin that looked smooth under the strange light from their suits. Their faces were long, with large, dark eyes that reflected the glow of their damaged ship. They moved with a quick, efficient grace, not hurried, but utterly precise. They did not speak. Tools in their long-fingered hands emitted beams of light that scanned the cracked hull. One of them, who seemed to be in charge, Jae thought of him as the captain, made a sharp gesture. The others began to work. With careful, practiced movements, they opened panels on the ship's hull that Jae had not even seen. They extracted glowing crystals and spools of fibrous cable. They pulled out a central core that throbbed with a brighter violet light, placing it carefully into a container on one of their discs. They were not salvaging. They were harvesting, taking only the pieces that still had value, like surgeons removing organs from a dead patient. The whole process took less than 30 minutes. The captain stood near the wreck, his large eyes scanning the readings on a device. He looked at the cracked, darkening hull, then his gaze swept across the junkyard. It passed over the piles of scrap, over the old crane, and finally settled on the shadow where Jae hid. Jae felt seen, as clearly as if he were standing in the open. Their eyes met. Jae saw no anger, no fear, not even curiosity. What he saw was a profound, chilling indifference. It was the look a person gives a stone in their path or a bug on the windshield. The captain's gaze said, "You are part of the landscape. This broken thing is now part of the landscape too." With a final nod to his crew, the captain turned. They boarded their discs. The hum rose in pitch, and without a sound, the 3 ships lifted, turned, and shot into the sky, vanishing into the blackness in seconds. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. Jae stood there for a long time, the cold seeping through his jacket. He finally walked to the edge of the crater. The ship was just a dark, dead shape now. The violet light in the crack had faded to a faint shimmer. They had left it. They had come all this way with power he could not imagine. And they had left their broken machine in his backyard because they had decided it was worthless. A slow heat began to burn in Jae's chest, pushing aside the shock and the fear. It was a familiar heat. It was the same feeling he had when he looked at a smashed car that the insurance company had written off. The feeling that said, "Nothing is ever truly finished. Nothing is beyond use." He reached out a tentative hand and touched the hull. It was cold and smooth. This wasn't sky trash. This was a message, left in the one place on Earth designed to handle what others threw away. He looked from the alien wreck to the mountains of human scrap around him. For the first time in years, a purpose, hard and sharp, clicked into place in his mind. They thought it was garbage. He was a man who built his life from garbage. He turned and walked back to his trailer. Not to sleep, but to make 2 phone calls. He needed an engineer who understood the impossible, and he needed a friend who wasn't afraid of a little hard work. The desert night was no longer silent. It was humming with a new, unasked-for possibility. The first to arrive was Tae-shik Lee. He came in a rattling old truck 2 days later, having driven from a coastal city where he fixed fishing boat engines. He was a big man with broad shoulders and hands scarred by a lifetime of tools. He and Jay had worked together years ago, before life pulled them in different directions. Jay had only said on the phone, "I found something. I need your eyes." Tae-shik stood at the crater's edge, his usual smile gone. He stared at the obsidian shape for a full 5 minutes without speaking. He finally climbed down, walked right up to the hull, and knocked on it with his knuckles. It made a sound like tapping on granite. "This is not a plane," Tae-shik stated. "No," Jay agreed. "Where are the engines? The rivets? The seams?" Tae-shik ran his hand over the surface. "It is like one piece of stone. But it flew." It did. Others came and took pieces out of it. Then they left. Tae-shik turned to look at Jay, his face serious. "They left it here? With you?" "With all of this," Jay said, waving a hand at the endless scrap. "They saw the junkyard. They saw me. They decided it belonged here." A deep frown settled on Tae-shik's face. He understood being dismissed. He understood being told something was too broken to fix. He looked from the ship to the piles of rusted steel and forgotten machinery. "So, they gave us their trash." He patted the cold hull. "Okay, let's see what this trash is made of." The next morning, a small, dusty sedan pulled into the yard. Sumin Park got out. She was young, with sharp eyes that were already tired. Jay had mentored her briefly when she was a brilliant student, full of ideas. Now she worked in a government research lab, where her ideas were always too theoretical or risky. Jay's call had been a lifeline from a past when people still tried to make new things. She walked to the crater, a tablet computer in her hand. When she saw the ship, she dropped the tablet into the dirt. She didn't even notice. She walked forward as if in a dream, her physicist's mind trying and failing to categorize what she was seeing. This is impossible," she whispered. She pointed her handheld scanner at it. The readings went wild. The atomic structure, it's aligned in fractal layers. The energy signature is residual, but it's not radioactive decay, it's not chemical. It's something else. She looked at the jagged crack. "It's wounded." Jay explained what he had seen. The aliens, their harvest, their indifference to Sumin's shock slowly hardened into something else. Anger. They took the core? The central power source. Yes. And left the rest because without it, the system is dead. It is like taking the heart from a body. She bit her lip, thinking. Their technology. It looks grown. Biological. It likely needs specific signals, specific energy patterns to function. To heal. We don't have those. We can't speak its language. A heavy silence fell over the 3 of them. The desert wind whistled through the ship's crack, a lonely sound. Then Tae-shik grunted. He kicked the tire of a nearby wrecked truck. "So we do not speak its language," he said, his voice rough. "Fine. A man who loses a leg does not need a doctor who speaks his language. He needs a carpenter. He needs an engineer." He gestured at the skeletal frames of cars around them. "We don't know how to make its alien heart beat again. So we give it a new one, a simple one. We give it prosthetics." Jay and Sumin stared at him. "Prosthetics?" Sumin asked. Tae-shik nodded at the ship. "It is a body. It is broken. We do not try to be alien doctors. We are human engineers. We bridge the gaps with what we know. We make a new leg from metal and wire. We hook it to the nerves we can find. A slow understanding dawned on Sumin's face. We don't repair the original systems. We interface with them. We provide external support. Power, control, structure. Our own technology grafted onto theirs. Jay looked from his old friend's determined face to the young scientist's gleaming eyes, and then to the dark, silent ship. The feeling of purpose grew stronger. This was not about stealing alien secrets. It was about the most human act of all. Taking care of a broken thing. Where do we start? Jay asked. Sumin was already climbing towards the crack, her fear gone. We map the nervous system. We find every point where energy once flowed, where signals passed. We catalog the wounds. Taeshik cracked his knuckles. I will start building the tools. We will need cutters that can handle this material. We will need frames to hold it. We will need a new heart. He looked at a large old diesel generator near the trailer. We start with that. Jay smiled, a real smile for the first time in years. He was no longer just a salvage man. He was the keeper of a seed. And he had just found the right people to help it grow, in a way its original owners could never have imagined. The work began that afternoon, not with a flash of genius, but with the slow, careful application of human stubbornness. The work was slow. It was not like building a house. It was like performing surgery on a patient made of stone and light. Without a medical textbook, Sumin's first task was to understand the ship's language. The aliens had taken the core, but a network of faint, thread-like channels ran through the hull like veins. With equipment bought cheaply from failed tech startups, she spent weeks trying to stimulate them. Electricity did nothing. Lasers caused a dull flicker. Sound, magnetism, heat, all were ignored. One cold morning, she tried a simple chemical battery, connecting copper wires to 2 points on the channel. For a second, nothing. Then, a faint, gold-colored light traveled down the alien vein. It was weak, but it was a response. It's not about power, she whispered to Jay. It's about imbalance, a potential difference. It's like a plant responding to light. The simple, basic. They had their first word. Not a word of technology, but of nature. Taeshik worked on the body. His cutters and saws failed against the hull. He finally brought in a water jet cutter, a roaring machine that used a stream of water mixed with hard grit. It was a crude, violent tool. It screamed as it bit into the alien material, throwing out a spray of water and black dust. He was not performing surgery now. He was a sculptor, carving access panels where none existed. He built strong frames from salvaged I-beams to hold sections of the hull open. Inside, they found structures of crystal and fibrous bundles, many shattered. His philosophy was simple. If a pipe is broken, you do not wish for a new pipe. You find a hose and 2 clamps. He began to build a new skeleton inside the ship. He used carbon fiber rods and aerospace-grade titanium brackets, scavenged from old satellite ground equipment. He grafted them onto the solid parts of the alien frame. It was ugly and strong. Jay was the connector. He learned to follow Sumin's nerves. The golden channels. Where they were severed, he and Taeshik ran their own wires. Not superconductors, but thick, insulated copper cables, the kind used in power stations. They bundled them along the new titanium frame, connecting them to human circuit boards Sumin designed. These boards were simple. Their job was to take a human electrical signal and turn it into the precise imbalance the alien veins needed. The biggest problem was the heart. The ship had no power. Taeshik's idea started with the big diesel generator. But it was loud, dirty, and weak. They needed more. Jay used all his contacts in the salvage world. He bought broken pieces of technology. A damaged solar power array from a failed desert project. The capacitor banks from a shuttered physics lab. 3 small, experimental fusion cells from a company that had gone bankrupt. None worked perfectly on their own. Hygiene arrived in the 3rd month. She was Taeshik's granddaughter, a university student with tired eyes and a laptop covered in stickers. She saw the messy nest of cables and the glowing lines on Sumin's screens. It looks like a messed-up network trying to reboot, she said. The alien system is the damaged hardware. Your boards are trying to be the new operating system, but you have no compiler. She did not try to hack the alien code. She said there was no code to hack. Instead, she built a digital translator. She wrote a program that took a simple human command, turn on light, and broke it down into 1,000 tiny electrical pulses. She sent these pulses through Sumin's circuit boards into the alien veins. It was like teaching a muscle to flex by tapping on it 1,000,000 times in the right sequence. One evening, after a year of work, they were ready for a first test. The ship, now called Mongnan by Jay, was a bizarre sight. Its sleek black form was held open by steel frames. Inside, a spiderweb of human-made materials lay over the alien bones. Wires and cables snaked everywhere, connected to humming, boxy human machines stacked along the walls. The goal was simple. Turn on one internal light. Hygiene typed the command. Her program ran. Sumin's boards hummed. Electricity from the patchwork of generators flowed through the thick cables into the boards and was transformed. A cascade of golden light raced down the alien channels in the ceiling, and with a soft, warm glow, a panel of light on the wall came on. It was not the cold violet of the aliens. It was a familiar, gentle white-yellow, powered by a human light bulb they had wired into the alien socket. It was a small thing, a single light, but in that warm glow, they saw not just an alien ship, but their own fingerprints. They had not fixed it. They had given it a prosthetic limb, and the limb had worked. The Mongnan was no longer a broken alien thing. It was something new. It was quiet in the hangar they had built around it. The only sound was the steady thump of the diesel generator outside. Tae-shik put a greasy hand on Jay's shoulder. "We gave it a new nerve," he said, his voice thick. "A human nerve." Jay looked at the warm light, then at the faces of his friends, lit by their creation. The aliens had seen a corpse. They had seen a patient, and they had just made it blink. Years bled into one another in the high desert. The makeshift hangar around the Mongnan grew into a proper workshop, patched together from scrap metal and determination. The team became a family, bound by grease, frustration, and small, hard-won victories. The single light became 100. They learned to make the alien doors slide open with the whir of human servos. They made environmental systems breathe with a combination of alien filters and big industrial air pumps. The real challenge was movement. The ship's own thrust was gone, its natural systems dormant. Tae-shik, with a feverish look in his eyes, proposed the unthinkable. "We do not wake up its legs. We build it a wheelchair, a very fast, very strong wheelchair." He and Jay traveled across continents, buying discarded pieces of cutting-edge human propulsion. They acquired 4 small, experimental aerospike rocket engines from a canceled spaceplane project. They were inefficient and loud, but they had immense power. Welding them to the Mungnan stern was a brutal act of violence against the ship's sleek lines. They looked like crude metal cans bolted onto a work of art. Powering them was the next problem. The alien systems needed delicate imbalance. The rockets needed raw, explosive energy. Sumin and Hygiene devised a 2-tier system. The human-made fusion cells, hooked in a series, would provide the main juice. They built a massive capacitor bank, a wall of stolen energy that could be dumped into the rockets all at once for a sudden burst. It was ugly, inelegant, and incredibly dangerous. The controls were Hygiene's masterpiece. She created a piloting interface that was part video game, part heavy machinery. Jay would sit in the command chair, which they had rebuilt from an old jet cockpit seat. Before him were not alien crystals, but 3 rugged computer screens and a pair of modified flight sticks. To turn, he would not think a command. He would physically move the stick. Hygiene's program would translate that movement into a storm of signals for the alien guidance vanes, while simultaneously firing the correct human rockets. The day of the first flight test arrived. The air was tense. They stood outside, far from the hangar, looking at the Mongnan on the salt flat. It sat there, a sleek black arrowhead with 4 ugly, pitted nozzles stuck to its back. It looked wounded and proud at the same time. Jay sat in the chair. His hands were sweaty. "System check," he said, his voice echoing in the cabin. "Power is green," Sumin said from her station, her eyes on the wild energy readings. "Alien guidance is accepting the handshake. It's confused, but it's listening. Thrust controls are linked, Hygiene said, her fingers flying over a keyboard. Remember, it will be slow to respond. There is a delay in the translation. Just don't blow us up, Taeshik grumbled over the radio from outside. I did not polish those rockets for nothing. Jay took a deep breath. He pushed the left stick forward slightly, a command for a minimal lift. The process began. He felt a deep, electronic shudder through the ship as Hygiene's program shouted its translated commands. The fusion cells whined. Outside, the 4 aerospike engines coughed, then roared to life, spitting out cones of blue-orange flame and kicking up a storm of dust and salt. The Mongnen lifted from the ground. It was not a smooth float. It jerked up, wobbled, and hung in the air 5 meters up, shaking violently. Alerts blared on Jay's screen, alien systems protesting the crude vibration. But it was flying, on human-made fire. Now, a little forward, he muttered to himself. He nudged the right stick. The response was not smooth. The ship lurched forward like a car with a bad transmission, the engine stuttering and then blasting. It was ugly. It was inelegant. It was the exact opposite of the silent, graceful discs the aliens had used. It was a beast, and it was theirs. They flew for 10 minutes, just circles over the junkyard. Each movement was a fight, a negotiation between alien grace and human force. But it worked. The final test was the jump. The alien faster-than-light drive was a mystery. Its main crystal was gone, but the housing remained, a chamber of strange geometry in the ship's core. Suman believed that if they pumped enough power through the human connections they grafted onto its edges, they might trigger a shadow of its function. They didn't know where it would go. They just aimed it up, away from Earth. Jay aimed the ship at a blank part of the sky. Engaging the jump drive, he said. The words felt silly. He pressed a physical button. The capacitor bank dumped all its stored energy at once into the alien chamber. The effect was not silent. The ship groaned like a living thing in pain. The light inside turned a painful white. Then, space outside the window seemed to stretch and snap. It felt like being in a giant car that had just been hit from behind. Jay was thrown hard against his restraints. A monitor cracked. Something in the back sparked. Then, it was calm. The stars outside were different. They were alone. They had moved. The jump had been short, maybe just to the edge of the solar system. It had been brutal, jarring, and violent. But they had done it. They sat in the sudden quiet, the ship humming with its own strange hybrid song. The alien systems, soothed by the familiar concept of FTL travel, settled into a contented purr. The human systems ticked and cooled. Suman broke the silence, a laugh of pure relief in her voice. It doesn't glide. It kicks. Jay looked out at the alien stars, his body aching from the jolt. He smiled. The Mongnan was not a copy of alien technology. It was a reinvention. It was clumsy, powerful, and alive. They had built a final revenge not with weapons, but with a stubborn, brilliant refusal to believe something was broken beyond use. The ship around him was the proof. Captain Vral stood on the bridge of the Tali command ship, the unblinking eye. It was smooth and silent. The light was a soft, constant violet. His crew moved with quiet efficiency. He felt the calm certainty of his duty. His mission, years after the minor incident of the damaged scout ship, was a simple one: formal integration. The world called Earth was classified as a Kval species, technologically nascent, socially fragmented, resilient but primitive. According to Tali law, such worlds were to be brought into the hierarchy as protected clients. They would provide biological and mineral resources. In return, they would receive stability and the slow, measured gift of simpler technology. It was a logical, orderly process. The report on the damaged scout had been filed and forgotten. The planet was a salvage yard. The loss was insignificant. His flotilla, 3 sleek ships, dropped out of FTL at the edge of the solar system. They moved inward toward the small blue world. He ordered a standard broadcast on multiple frequencies, a message of peaceful intent and superior authority. He expected confusion. He expected awe. He expected the primitive networks to light up with panic and wonder. He did not expect the single ship.it appeared on their sensors without warning, as if it had been waiting in the blind spot of a star. One moment there was nothing. The next, it was just there, hanging in the void between them and their destination. Vral studied the sensor image. A flicker of familiarity passed through him, cold and unsettling. The silhouette was that of a Tali scout, a Cthar-class vessel. But it was wrong. It was covered in scars and strange, angular protrusions. Ugly metallic growths clung to its stern. Its hull was a patchwork of original obsidian and rough, repaired sections. It looked diseased. It looked brutal. Before he could give an order, it broadcasted. The signal was on an old Tali emergency band, but the voice was wrong. It was a synthesized approximation of their language, flat and without emotion, built from 1,000 sampled sounds. Unidentified vessels. It stated, "You are approaching a protected world." Vral felt a ripple of confusion across his bridge. Protected? By whom? By this? He opened a channel, his own voice rich with natural tone. "This is Captain Vral of the Tali hierarchy. We are on a diplomatic mission to the third planet. Identify yourself." There was a pause. He could almost hear the whir of crude processors. "You left a key," the flat voice replied. "We made a new lock." The words were simple. The meaning took a moment to sink in. The damaged scout, the salvage yard, the indifferent glance he had given the lone human figure among the scrap. A cold knot tightened in Vral's stomach. It was impossible. The species lacked the foundational science. The core had been removed. The vessel was dead matter. Yet it floated before him. Its engines glowed not with clean violet plasma, but with a hot, orange-blue chemical fire. It hummed with a vibration that was all wrong. Beside him, his tactical officer spoke softly. "Captain, the vessel, it is generating a warp field. But the energy signature is chaotic. It is mixed with high levels of primitive fusion and electromagnetic noise. It should not be holding together." Humiliation, sharp and hot, washed over Vral. This was not a reclaimed ship. It was a mockery, a dead thing puppet by ignorant hands. It was an insult to order, to perfection, to the Tali way. "Diplomacy is suspended," Vral said, his voice cold. "That vessel is Tali property, defiled. We will recover it and remove the contamination." He turned to his tactical officer. "Target its propulsion. Disable it. Use minimal force." The unblinking eyes weapons came online. Perfect, focused lances of plasma energy, designed to slice through shields and hull with surgical precision. They fired on the bridge of the Mongnan. The alarm that sounded was a loud, human siren. Jay gripped the controls. "Shields!" he yelled. Sumin slammed her hand on a panel. Their shields were not a unified bubble. They were a network of 6 overlapping human magnetic field generators, each salvaged from different particle accelerators. They came up in uneven sections. The plasma beam struck on a Tali ship. The shield would have glowed and evenly distributed the impact. On the Mongnan, the shield section that took the hit bulged inward, like a rubber sheet stretched to tearing. It glowed a violent red, and the ship shuddered from the stress. But it did not break. The field generators, pushed far beyond their design, screamed in protest, but they held. Their shot was too perfect. Hygiene shouted, her eyes on her screens. "Our shields are a mess. They don't know where to aim." Jay felt the beast of his ship around him. It was not designed for a duel. It was designed to survive. "Eshik. Give me thrust now. All of it." Behind him, Tashik was in the engine room, a place of heat and noise. He threw levers. Holding together. "Go!" The Mongnan did not turn elegantly. Its 4 rockets fired in a staggered burst, throwing it into a lurching sideways roll. Another plasma beam seared past, missing by meters. Vral watched, his disgust growing. The thing moved like a wounded animal, not a starship. He ordered a full spread. Multiple beams lanced out. They would end this farce. The bridge of the Mongnan was a storm of noise and light. Red alerts flashed. The ship shook as another near-miss from the Tali weapons stressed their patchwork shields. Jay's hands were tight on the controls. They were surviving, but they were losing. The alien ships were too fast, too precise. "We cannot win a shooting match," Sumin called out, reading the energy spikes from the enemy vessels. "Their systems are too efficient. They are like surgeons. We are a man with a hammer." Jay watched the lead alien ship, the unblinking eye, turn gracefully for another pass. It moved with a clean, beautiful certainty. It was everything their ship was not. An idea, ugly and desperate, formed in his mind. It was not a pilot's idea. It was a salvager's idea. "Hygiene," he said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "Can you flood their targeting sensors? Not with a virus. With noise. With nonsense." Hygiene's fingers were already flying. "Their systems are too advanced. A direct hack is impossible." "Don't hack the system," Jay said, watching the enemy ship. "Just shout at it. Give it everything we have. Radio waves, radar pulses, radiation readings from our engine leak. Everything. All at once. Make it hard for them to see." A fierce grin spread across Hygiene's face. "A denial of service attack. With garbage data." She began rerouting power, opening every emitter and sensor on the Mongnan and telling them to scream on the unblinking eye. Vral's tactical officer flinched. "Captain, the derelict is emitting massive, chaotic broad-spectrum interference. Our targeting resolution is dropping by 40%. It is illogical. It is blinding itself as well."
Vral scolded.
It was another dirty, inelegant trick. Switch to manual visual targeting. Close the distance. Remove its engines. The Tali ship surged forward, smooth and fast. "They're coming in close," Sumin warned. "Good," Jay muttered. He turned to Taeshik on the intercom. "Old friend, is the grappler ready?" In the belly of the Mongnan, Taeshik stood by a console he had built himself. It controlled a device he was especially proud of, a massive magnetic grappler, built from the parts of two industrial ship-to-ship cargo movers. It was a tool for hauling scrap, not for battle. "The claw is hungry," Taeshik replied. Jay took a deep breath. He cut the main thrusters. The Mongnan drifted, its engines sputtering dark. On his command, Sumin routed all shield power to the forward generators, making them glow a furious, unstable white. He then triggered an emergency alert that flashed through all systems. A simulated core overload. To the Tali sensors, for a brief moment, the Mongnan would look like a dying vessel about to explode. The ruse worked. The unblinking eye slowed its approach, beginning a cautious, evasive maneuver to avoid the fictional blast. "Now!" Jay yelled. He fired the attitude thrusters, a sudden, jerking movement that shoved the Mongnan sideways. At the same time, Taeshik fired the grappler. With a heavy, mechanical roar, a massive pincer of reinforced steel shot out from the Mungnan's belly on a thick cable. It was not a weapon designed for space combat. It was slow and obvious, which was why the Tali had no defense for it. The claw, moving with brutal force, slammed into the smooth hull of the unblinking eye and clamped shut. Magnetic seals activated with a thud they could all feel through the ship. The two vessels were locked together, the elegant alien ship and the patched-up human hybrid. They drifted, connected by a crude, physical tether on the Tali bridge. Alarms sounded of a different kind. A hull breach warning, structural stress alerts. Vral was thrown from his feet. The impact was not energetic, but it was profoundly physical. It was undignified. It was like being tackled by a beast. "They have attached themselves to us, Captain," the tactical officer said. Disbelief in his voice, Vral stared at the visual feed showing the monstrous metal claw gripping his ship. Rage, pure and hot, replaced his cold disdain. "Cut it loose. Use the hull integrity beams." Before they could act, a new transmission came from the derelict. The flat, synthesized voice returned. "Do not struggle. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to deliver a message. In person." Jay's voice was now underneath the alien words, speaking in Korean. Sumin, Hygiene, you're with me. Taeshik, keep the claw locked. If they try to cut it, give them a power surge they will never forget. Jay stood up from the pilot's chair. He was not wearing alien armor. He wore a heavy work suit, stained with grease. Sumin and Hygiene stood with him. They carried no laser rifles. They carried data slates, tools, and a simple, sturdy metal case. They walked to the airlock they had installed years ago, a human-made chamber with thick, round doors. As it cycled, Jay looked at the two women. Their faces were pale but set. They were not soldiers. They were engineers. They were here to finish the job. With a final clank, the airlock connected to the unblinking eye's hull, using the grappler's connection point as an anchor. The door opened, not onto the elegant interior of a Tali ship, but onto a smooth corridor now scarred by the grappler's impact on the other side. A squad of Tali guards stood, their sleek weapons raised. Behind them, Captain Vral stood, his large eyes wide with a fury he could barely contain. Jay took the first step onto the alien ship, his heavy boots sounding loud on the floor. He looked at the raised weapons, then directly at Vral. "You left us a broken thing," Jay said, his voice quiet, knowing the aliens' devices would translate. "We would like to show you what we built with it." The air on the Tali ship was cool and smelled faintly of clean metal. Captain Vral stared at the three humans. They looked so ordinary in their stained work clothes, standing in the smooth, perfect corridor of his ship. The humiliation of the crude grappler was a physical pain in his chest. He gestured with a long hand, and his guards lowered their weapons slightly. "You have desecrated Tali property and committed an act of war?" Vral said, his translated voice cold. "You will be detained, and the thing you built will be dismantled." Jay did not flinch. He held up the simple metal case in his hand. "Before you decide that, Captain, you should see the invoice. For the repair work." A taller, slender alien with softer eyes stepped forward from behind the guards.
Emissary Kosai.
Her role was diplomacy. "Repair?" she asked, her tone curious rather than angry. "You claim you repaired the Kthar?" "No," Sumin answered, her voice clear. "We could not repair it. You took its heart. You left us with a corpse. We did not try to be doctors. We became engineers." She nodded to Hygiene. Hygiene held up her data slate. With a tap, a hologram appeared in the center of the corridor. It was not a sleek presentation. It was a raw, edited compilation of years of work. Grainy video from a headlamp camera showed Taeshik's waterjet cutter screaming against the black hull. They saw the messy nests of copper wire, the welded titanium frames, the ugly rocket engines being bolted on. Vral watched, his disgust growing. It was butchery. It was an offense against beauty and order. But Xai watched differently. She saw the human faces, streaked with sweat and dust, focused not on conquest, but on a puzzle. She saw Jay patiently following golden threads of light. She saw Sumin's exhausted triumph when a single light glowed white instead of violet. The hologram showed the first, jerking flight. It showed the brutal, kicking jump into FTL. It showed the Mongnan as it was now, a hybrid, a chimera, held together by human stubbornness and alien bones. The final image filled the space. It was a detailed scan of the ship's core. At its center was the beautiful, empty housing of the Tali drive crystal. But wrapped around it, interfacing with 100 connection points, was a tangled web of human technology. Fusion cells, capacitor banks, carbon nanotube conduits, and a thick bundle of ordinary copper wire. It was a beautiful, terrifying knot. Jay opened the metal case. Inside was not a weapon. It was a physical object, a trophy from their decade of work. It was a short length of the original alien hull material, cracked and dark. Fused to it with rough welds was a piece of the salvaged titanium frame, and grafted onto that was a cluster of human wires and a small, working light bulb. It was the story of the Mongnan in one piece. "You see your broken thing?" Jay said, looking at Vral, then at Xai. "We saw a seed. You left it in soil you thought was barren. But our soil is different. We grow different things." He took a step forward, placing the fused piece of metal and light on the smooth floor between them. "Your revenge is not defeat. It is this knowledge. You are perfect. You discard what is broken. We are not perfect. We see broken things and we ask, what can it become? We will make broken things whole again in our own image, not as copies, as something new. Jay turned his gaze directly to Vral, whose face was a mask of conflicted fury. You looked at me and saw a part of the landscape. Now you have to look at me and see a gardener. The silence in the corridor was total. The guards were still. Vral was struggling between the order to destroy these creatures and the shocking, illogical truth they had shown him. Their strength was not technology. It was perspective. It was a terrifying, adaptable strength. Emissary Xi slowly bent down and picked up the fused piece of hull and human wire. She felt the rough welds, the sharp edges. She saw the humble light bulb. Her people would have recycled the original material into something new and perfect. These humans had added to it. They had made it more. She looked at Vral. Captain, she said, her voice formal. The Tali hierarchy has no classification for this. They are not Kval nascent. They are something else. Planet of engineers, of rebuilders. This changes the diplomatic assessment. Significantly.
Vral understood.
She was saving him from a worse humiliation. To attack now, after being shown this, would not be an enforcement of order. It would be an admission of fear. Fear of their messy, stubborn, creative will. Jay gave a small nod. We will return to our world. You can keep that.
A souvenir.
He turned, and with Su-Min and Hygiene, walked back through the airlock into the Mongnan. The grappler disengaged with a heavy clunk. The human ship, scarred and powerful, drifted back. Its crude engines flaring to life, Vral stood at the viewport, watching it go. It moved clumsily against the stars, but it moved with a terrifying confidence. He was not looking at a stolen ship. He was looking at a mirror, and it showed him a truth about the universe he had never wanted to see. On the Mongnan, Jay sat in the pilot's chair. He did not set a course for home immediately. He just looked at the stars, quiet. The revenge was complete. It was not in the sky. It was in the mind of every Tali on that ship. Earth was no longer a salvage yard in their eyes. It was a workshop, and the door was now open. Behind him, Taeshik clapped a hand on his shoulder. Lunch? The old engineer asked. Jay smiled. Yeah, he said. Lunch sounds good. The ship turned, and with a familiar, jarring kick, vanished into the dark.